What would you do if the very people you sacrificed everything for, your own family, threw you away like you never mattered? I worked 3 jobs, gave up college, and poured my youth into saving my parents from losing their home. I was their rock, or so I thought, until the day they handed the deed to my ungrateful brother as a wedding gift while I was still paying off their debt. That was the moment I realized blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Before we begin, hit that like button if you've ever felt taken for granted and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you've ever had to walk away from your own family to protect your peace, this story is for you. Let's begin. My name is Anna. I'm 27 years old, and this is the story of how I sacrificed everything for my family, only to be discarded when they no longer needed me. I grew up in a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked and everyone knows everyone's business. My parents weren't rich, but they were proud homeowners. That house meant everything to them. Our childhood birthdays, winter storms, and backyard barbecues were all tied to those 4 walls. So when I found out in my early 20s that they were drowning in debt and about to lose the home, I didn't think twice. I stepped in like any loyal daughter would. At the time, I was just finishing my second year of university. I had dreams, big ones. But dreams don't pay the mortgage, so I dropped out of school and started working. Not 1 job, 3. During the day, I worked the register at a grocery store. At night, I waitressed at a diner where the tips barely covered gas. And on weekends, I cleaned offices while everyone else my age was out enjoying their youth. Every cent I made went toward the mortgage. I lived in a cramped room I rented from a stranger, surviving on instant noodles and caffeine just to keep going. And I never complained, not once, because I believed they appreciated it. I believed they loved me enough to never forget what I gave up. Years went by. My brother, Adam, the golden child, never lifted a finger to help. While I was breaking my back, he was partying through college on my parents' dime, living in a fancy apartment they paid for. But I never envied him. I told myself he'd grow up eventually and that the love I poured into my family would come back to me one day. I reminded myself that loyalty mattered more than recognition. Then came the day the mortgage was finally paid off. I remember standing outside the house looking at it like it was a trophy we had all won together. My father hugged me, said he was proud. My mother cried. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could start thinking about me again. Maybe go back to school, maybe get a place of my own. That's when everything changed. It started with a family dinner. My parents were beaming, Adam grinning like he knew something I didn't, and then they dropped the bomb. They were giving the house to Adam as a wedding gift. Just like that, the same house I had spent 5 years of my life saving. No warning, no thank you, not even a conversation. They said it made sense. He was starting a family after all, and I was just one person. I sat there, frozen, my plate untouched, my stomach turning to stone. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just nodded and smiled because in that moment, something inside me broke and something stronger took its place. I walked out of that dinner with my hands shaking and my heart numb, but my mind had never been clearer. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just stared at the ceiling in my tiny room, letting the silence swallow the years I had given up for them. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how easy it had been for them to erase me, to hand over the very thing I bled for to someone who never deserved it. They didn't even try to explain. It was as if they believed I wouldn't question it, as if I didn't matter. But I did matter. And they were about to remember that. The next morning, while Adam was probably off celebrating his new home, I opened my laptop and made a decision I should have made years ago. I started looking for online business courses, signed up for every free class I could find, and created a brand new Gmail account with no trace of my past. I stopped answering family calls. I told no one what I was doing. I just disappeared into the grind, but this time, it was for me. I worked my cleaning job during the day, and at night, I built. I learned digital marketing, affiliate sales, drop shipping. I failed a lot, but I refused to stop. Every mistake was fuel. Every sleepless night made me sharper. 6 months in, I made my first $1,000. It wasn't much, but it hit differently than any paycheck I'd ever earned. It was mine. By year 1, I was pulling in more than I had with all 3 of my old jobs combined. And the irony, I was working fewer hours than ever. I moved into a decent apartment with windows that let the light in. I bought furniture that didn't come secondhand, and slowly I started to feel like I existed again, not just as a daughter or a sister, but as Anna, the woman who refused to stay invisible. But I never forgot what they did. I never forgot that house. So one afternoon, while browsing listings out of curiosity, I saw the house next door to my parents'. It was a mirror image of the one I had saved, only with better lighting and a backyard that didn't face the alley. It was overpriced, outdated, and probably not worth the asking price. I bought it the same day, all cash, no mortgage, no cosigner, just my name on the deed. It felt like planting a flag in the soil they thought I would never touch again. My comeback didn't need applause, it just needed proof. From that day on, I lived a life they could watch but not touch. Every morning when I stepped out in heels and confidence, I could feel their eyes peeking through blinds. They didn't dare approach me. Maybe it was shame, maybe it was confusion, or maybe they finally realized that the daughter they cast aside had become someone they no longer understood. It didn't take long for word to spread. The same people who used to pity me for staying behind were suddenly whispering my name in admiration. I had no interest in bragging or rubbing it in anyone's face. I just lived confidently, freely, and unapologetically, but the neighborhood couldn't help but notice. Anna, the quiet girl who used to take the bus to 3 cleaning jobs, now pulled into her driveway in a German car. The house that once looked like a relic became the sleekest renovation on the block. I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. But I won't lie, it felt good. What didn't feel good, however, was the sudden change in my parents' behavior. For months, they hadn't even acknowledged I'd moved in next door. No welcome, no apology, not even a cold wave. But the moment they saw a local business magazine run a profile on my e-commerce brand, things shifted. Suddenly, I was Anna, the successful entrepreneur, not Anna the burden, not Anna the helper. The mask of silence dropped, and their smiles returned, forced, brittle, and hungry for proximity to what I had built without them. It started with awkward encounters at the mailbox. Then came the invitations, dinners, family gatherings, even a thinly veiled offer to help out with Adam's new business idea. They acted as if nothing had ever happened, as if I'd imagined the betrayal, the erasure, the night they handed my sacrifices to someone else like they meant nothing. I smiled politely. I declined every offer, and I kept building. My company expanded internationally. I hired a small team. I mentored women like me, forgotten, underestimated, overlooked, and helped them rewrite their own stories. Every move I made was a step further from the girl they once mistook for weak. Then came the moment I didn't expect. The house I once paid off, the very one they gave to Adam as a wedding gift, went up for sale. Rumors swirled. Apparently, Adam's startup had failed, he was drowning in debt, and he needed to liquidate fast. My parents were heartbroken. Publicly, they played the devastated family. Privately, they tried to call me again and again. I ignored them all. But when I saw that familiar front porch, the one I used to sweep every Saturday morning, I didn't feel rage. I felt closure. The house was no longer my burden. It was my lesson. And I had already moved next door, mentally, emotionally, and literally. They sold the house at a loss. I didn't buy it. I didn't need to. Already owned everything they thought I could never reach. When I think back to those years I spent hustling between jobs, saving every penny, and dreaming of just a little space to breathe, I realize now how heavy silence can be. Not the peaceful kind. No, this was the silence of resentment, of knowing you're being used but staying anyway, for love, for duty, for the hope that maybe, just maybe, it would one day be seen. But in that moment, when my brothers sold the house I paid off like it was just a building, I knew nothing I had done ever mattered to them. Not the nights I stayed up helping my mom with her pain, not the groceries I filled their fridge with, not the way I gave up years of my own dreams so Adam could live his. After the house was gone, my parents did what they always did, pretended like they had no part in it. They claimed Adam made the decision on his own, that they didn't know, that they were shocked. But the truth was obvious in their eyes. They didn't regret what happened, only the result. Suddenly, they needed me. Not emotionally, financially. My name carried weight now. People listened when I spoke. My startup was attracting attention from investors. I had influence, and for them, that meant opportunity. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted access. I remember sitting at my kitchen counter sipping tea as a message from my father lit up my phone screen. He wrote, "We're proud of you. Come over sometime. We miss you." There was no mention of Adam, no apology, no acknowledgement of how they'd cast me aside like a disposable safety net. That was the moment it really hit me. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was a backup plan. And I refused to be anyone's backup ever again. So I responded with something I'd never had the courage to say before. "I'm doing well. I hope you are too. But I've moved on. Please respect that." No anger, no guilt, just truth. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself without shame. I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't owe them another chance. I had given all I had and they showed me what it was worth to them. Now, I would build for me. I didn't expect peace to feel so unfamiliar. For the first few weeks after I set that boundary, I kept waiting for a storm, for guilt, for regret, for the fear that I had made a mistake. But none of it came. Instead, I felt still, like the noise that had followed me all my life had finally quieted. I poured that silence into building. Not just my startup, but my life. I rented a small, sunny place not far from the neighborhood I grew up in. Recently hired. I hired a small team, people who believed in what I was building, who respected me without question, and I worked like I'd never worked before, not from desperation, but from fire. I was no longer proving myself to people who would never see me. I was building something for me. Then one morning, I passed the old neighborhood. The house Adam sold was now being renovated, gutted completely. Strangers lived in it. The garden I spent years caring for was destroyed. The windows were different. Everything was different. But across the street, a for sale sign stood in front of a smaller, slightly rundown house. I don't know what made me stop, but I parked the car and just stared at it. And the longer I looked, the more a strange idea started forming in my mind. I didn't want to go back. I had no interest in reclaiming the past. But what if I could build something right next to it? Not to compete, not to prove, just to show myself that I could. I made an offer the next day, cash. No mortgage. It wasn't a flashy house, but it was mine. I gutted it, redesigned it, poured my soul into every wall, every piece of furniture, and slowly it became a reflection of everything I had become. Independent, elegant, quietly powerful. People in the neighborhood started whispering. My parents heard, and when they asked if it was true, if I had really bought the house next to theirs, I answered with the calm they never gave me. Yes, I live there now, and no, I won't be coming over. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming space in the world and in myself. For the first time, I wasn't chasing love. I was living in my worth. The strange thing about success is that it doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in a home filled with peace, in a bank account that no longer keeps you up at night, in the calm that follows years of chaos. My new house became my sanctuary. Every morning I woke up and looked out the window, seeing the home I once saved with everything I had, now occupied by people who had no idea what it had cost me. And across that street, I stood taller. Work thrived. What started as a small app for restaurant scheduling exploded in popularity. Local businesses started using it, then national chains, then a major investor came knocking. I negotiated the deal myself, no lawyers trying to talk over me, no Adam reminding me what I owed the family, just me, Anna, the daughter who used to wait tables and cry in her car before night shifts, now sitting across from Suits, closing a $4.8 million investment round. News of the deal spread faster than I expected. My name appeared in a few articles. People from the past, old coworkers, classmates, even cousins suddenly reached out with polite curiosity or fake support. But when I saw my parents' car parked in front of my house one afternoon, I knew it was coming. I didn't open the door right away. I stood behind it for a moment, remembering all the times I had begged for a fraction of their attention, all the times they gave it to Adam without hesitation. When I opened it, they didn't look like the powerful parents I used to fear. They looked small, nervous. My mother's first words weren't, "I'm proud of you." They were, "Why didn't you tell us?" My father, quiet as always, just stared past me into the house, like trying to measure what I had built. I answered simply, because you didn't ask, not once. They stumbled through half-hearted praise, questions laced with entitlement, comments about how we're still family, and for the first time I saw it clearly. They weren't proud, they were afraid. Afraid that I no longer needed them, afraid that I had built something stronger than anything they could control. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just said the truth. You made your choices, you gave everything to Adam, and now I'm just doing the same for myself. They left. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was earned. The visit from my parents left a mark, not a wound, but a reminder of everything I'd overcome to stand where I was. In the weeks that followed, I stayed focused on my business. I hired a small but brilliant team. We built new features, scaled faster, and signed 3 more enterprise clients. Every win made it harder to believe that just a few years ago, I was scrubbing plates and saving every penny to keep a roof over their heads. Adam, on the other hand, seemed to be unraveling. Through mutual contacts, I heard that the house, the same one I'd paid off, was now drowning in debt. Adam had taken out loans for a business that never got off the ground. My parents had co signed. Now they were watching it all slip through their fingers. It should have satisfied me, should have felt like justice. But all I felt was a strange calm. I didn't need revenge anymore. My success was louder than any punishment I could have planned. But still, I couldn't ignore the poetic irony when my mother showed up at my office unannounced. She looked tired, smaller than I remembered. She sat across from me like we were strangers, and maybe we were. She asked if I could help Adam, just a small loan to get him back on his feet. The woman who once said I'd never be more than a waitress, now pleading for help from the daughter she threw away. I looked at her for a long time. I thought about all the nights I worked 3 jobs while Adam partied. I thought about how they gave him the house I paid for, how they erased me when it was convenient. And I said no, calmly, firmly. No explanation, no apology, just no. She cried. I didn't. She left. I stayed. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free, not because they finally saw my worth, but because I no longer needed them to. Weeks passed after my mother walked out of my office, and I didn't hear from them again. Not a call, not a message, just silence. And honestly, I'd preferred it that way. I'd spent so many years bending over backward for their approval, for a sliver of their affection, that the quiet now felt like peace. My home was finally mine, decorated the way I loved, filled with friends who felt like chosen family, and not a trace of the guilt I used to carry like a shadow. The success of my startup started attracting attention. A business magazine ran a feature on self-made women in tech, and I was listed among them. My photo, standing in front of my office building, smiling with my team, was printed on glossy paper under the headline, "From Waitress to CEO, Anna Ramirez's 3-year journey to $6 million in revenue." It was surreal. I'd never chased the spotlight, but there it was, my story, my truth, public and undeniable. The news reached my parents and my brother, of course. I found out from a former neighbor that they were furious, less because I didn't tell them and more because everyone else now knew what I had built without them. I could only imagine Adam's face when he saw my house featured in the real estate section as one of the most desirable properties in the neighborhood. The same neighborhood he used to boast about living in, the same street, just one door apart, only now I was the one the world admired and he was drowning in regret. But I didn't gloat. I didn't post passive-aggressive quotes or subtweets. I kept working, quietly, focused, grounded. My mission had shifted from proving them wrong to honoring myself, my younger self. The girl who used to cry alone in her car after long shifts, wondering if love from her family would ever come without strings. I no longer needed revenge. I had something better: peace, freedom, and the satisfaction of having built a life no one could take away. The invitation came on a crisp Sunday morning, folded neatly and hand-delivered by a courier. My parents were renewing their vows for their 35th anniversary, and apparently they were throwing a grand celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years ago, I would have moved mountains for a seat at that table. Now, I didn't even consider attending. I placed the invitation in a drawer I rarely opened and walked away. That night, I stood on the balcony of my home, and watched the lights from their backyard flicker in the distance. Music, laughter, people clinking glasses. But the silence in my heart was louder. I didn't feel excluded. I felt free. I didn't owe anyone a performance anymore. Not them, not anyone. And that was the real victory. A month later, I got a knock at the door. It was Adam. He looked older, thinner, like life had drained the arrogance out of him. He stumbled through a half apology, saying Mom and Dad had been talking a lot about making things right. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish. And then I calmly told him I had nothing left to give them. No anger, no explanations, just boundaries. I wished him well and closed the door, not with bitterness, but with finality. That chapter was closed. In the months that followed, my company hit 8 figures. I traveled more, I spoke at events, mentored other women, and even started a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name, the only person in my family who had ever truly believed in me. I built a life of purpose, and for the first time, everything I gave was by choice, not obligation. The house next door eventually went on the market. I didn't buy it. I didn't need to. That fight was over. Sometimes I pass my old family in town, we nod. That's it. And that's enough. Because I no longer crave their approval. I outgrew the hunger for their love the moment I learned to love myself without conditions. I look in the mirror now and see someone strong, someone who gave everything, even when it cost her everything, and still rose. This story isn't about revenge. It's about rebirth. So if you're watching this and you've ever been counted out, dismissed, or made to feel invisible, don't wait for them to change. Change your own life. Build it brick by brick, because one day they'll look back and realize the person they overlooked was the one who outshined them all. And you won't need to say a word. Your life will say it for you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life journeys of resilience, and share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Your story isn't over. In fact, it might just be getting started.